We're inviting people to come out and speak out, to speak their minds about their experience in Quebec City a few weeks ago. I find it incredible that the authorities can get away with launching 5,000 tear gas canisters on peaceful protesters and engage in chemical warfare in Canada in the year 2001 against people who were protesting peacefully. The Geneva Protocol lays down the rules for how countries can engage in international conflict, and tear gas is prohibited by the Geneva Protocol from being used in international conflict. How can it be that in Canada, when protesters are demonstrating and exercising their rights and demonstrating their concern about something, an issue of the day, that they're attacked with chemical weapons in Quebec City just a few weeks ago? Not only the use of chemical weapons, the police were firing at innocent protesters, tear gas canisters and plastic bullets. One of them, Eric Laferrière, was hit at point blank range in the throat by a plastic bullet, and he's lost his voice. He can no longer speak. And I think the fact that Eric Laferrière lost his voice and can no longer speak is a challenge to all Canadians who value our democratic right to speak out, that we use the voice that we have to speak out against the brutality and what took place in Quebec City.
It's often forgotten that the people who were exposed to that massive assault of tear gas bombs were not merely those of us who had come to Quebec to demonstrate against the FTAA and to protest against this process. They were the residents of Quebec City. I witnessed groups of people spill out of the front doors of what I assume were their own houses, retching and vomiting. People who, in their own houses, were being assaulted, if you like, were being assaulted and poisoned by tear gas.
60,000 people who opposed, the globalization of our economy, the globalization of our environment, of our human rights, of our labor standards, which is basically to the lowest common denominator, human rights, environmental standards, labor standards. I opposed that. I thought I'd check out Quebec City with the 60,000 other people who had a point to make, and we gathered in the street. I didn't have any rocks with me. I was dressed as I am today, and I was violently gassed for 2 days straight, all day Friday, all day Saturday, as people marched, went on these peaceful marches. I saw thousands of people sit in front of police lineups, give the peace sign. Saturday night at about 7:30, I was just on the street along with thousands of other people in a big park near the fence, and a fellow came running up to me, and he was washing his eyes out with water with a big water bottle. And as he was just starting to regain his consciousness, a middle-class guy, just standing beside me, just getting it together, all of a sudden he collapsed before me, and I looked down, and his forehead started gushing with blood. He had just, as he was standing there washing out his eyes, been shot with a bullet to the head and opened the skin, and he was laying on the ground in pain. Immediately a medic came. Incidentally, I don't know if you know, but there were hundreds of volunteers there from all over, medics that came as volunteers from all over North America to treat as volunteers the protesters that were being beaten and gassed and shot on the streets. Not only were the medics targeted and shot and gassed by the police lines, but they were, even the medic center where all the supplies were, was gassed, was raided. People were kicked out. These volunteer medics, their supplies, which they had purchased and fundraised over months, had all been confiscated. People who were being treated were kicked out. I mean, even doesn't the Geneva Convention even protect medics? So, I mean, there was massive human rights abuses going on there. So meanwhile, Saturday night, I'm standing on the street with thousands of other people, and all of a sudden, people are running. The crowd started scattering. I didn't know what was going on. And before I knew it, a lineup of cops came and basically busting up the whole area where a bunch of us were just standing and beating up people, including me, with batons, huge, heavy batons, beating us to the ground till they got their, 20 or 30 people onto the ground, handcuffed us. We're beating other people that were maybe a bit more raucous, hauled us over to the side, kept us on the bus all night long in the freezing cold, abandoned all my stuff, including my purse, my bag, my wallet, my bicycle, abandoned it on the streets, which it was promptly stolen. Kept me on the bus all night long, no food, no water. The next morning at 7 in the morning, hauled me into the jail. First thing they did, decontaminated me, made me take my clothes off and wash in a cold shower because the toxic gas was probably burning through my skin, and they knew something that we didn't know, which was that was toxic, and they had to get it off our bodies immediately. So we all washed, spent the whole, I was luckily released that night, but there was 4 of us women in one single cell, which is par for the course for the whole 3 or 4 days that a lot of the 160 people were busted, thrown in jail, all who, like me, that I spoke to were peaceful protesters. Food was crap. We didn't have water. I was released without charge. My partner was kept in for several more days, which meant I had to miss 4 days of work. All of my stuff got ripped off, and released without charge. So what was the point of that? But the beautiful thing that is the most hopeful story of this whole weekend, as far as I'm concerned, is that when I was released from jail, there was a jail solidarity camp outside the jail with about 50 protesters. 50 people camped, actually squatted on the jail property right outside the jail. So as people released one by one, we were greeted by 50 campers, many of whom had already been released, who were staying there in solidarity, welcoming people as they were released. Because you know what? The cops, when they attacked people and brought them into the jail, ended up losing a whole bunch of people's clothing and money. They stole almost everybody's money, and they lost conveniently, people's boots or people's coats. A lot of us were arrested in the daytime when we didn't have to wear coats.
What happened in Quebec City is they got the shit. They were gassed like everybody else in Quebec City. So there you go.
So that's
fond memories of Quebec City.
That's the CS-55.
Yeah, this is the tear gas that was fired at a lot of us.
And any concerns about the tear gas?
I have grave concerns about the tear gas. I understand that there might be chromosomal damage. There could be a whole host of cancers that result from the gas itself. So I'm doing research right now, and I think it's extremely irresponsible of the police to fire tear gas into crowds of people who don't have any kind of protection. The protection that many people had was flimsy at the best. Vinegar on the masks only helped them out a little bit, but the way the tear gas seared the lungs, I experienced this quite a bit. And I know the way I couldn't breathe was very, very alarming, and I still have trouble breathing. I still have problems with my respiratory system right now, so I think there is long-term damage in my lungs as a result of breathing in the tear gas. The heavy amounts of tear gas was incredible. There was no call for it, there was no reason for it, there was no threat against the police, there was certainly no threat against the summit. And it was just an overreaction just because of the police brutality and the mentality that they had was completely out of control.
Henry Martinuk.
Henry Martinuk, activist.
Guilty live. We're broadcasting live from Toronto. Is there anybody out there?